Meet PitchDB, the ultimate platform for speakers looking to make their mark on podcasts, conferences, and media outlets. PitchDB provides access to over 3 million platforms, ensuring you find the perfect avenue for your message. With AI integrations, your bios and pitches are tailored uniquely to each opportunity, giving you the edge you need. Join now at pitchdb.com.
Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I'm Annika Jackson here on Your Brand Amplified with Colin Sanburg of FinElevate, an MBA-led strategic accounting service. I'm so excited to dig into that and the differentiation between being an MBA-led versus a CPA-led financial institution for small businesses. But before we get into that, you have an intriguing story. You started your family business, went through some financial pitfalls and hurdles, and had to really figure this out for yourself. So I'd love for you to dive in to your journey and all of the different things that you did before you realized that this was what you needed to offer to other small businesses.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I won't tell you all the things I did because it was a long journey. I think like most of us in entrepreneurship, it is not a quick, sum it up in 30 seconds kind of thing. But in general, yeah. So I started in the family business. I actually had decided that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship before I started in the family business. And it was just the closest person to me who owned a business. And so I went to kind of see behind the curtain and, figure out how small business worked. And then I'd go out on my own. And here I am 22 years later, I still own that business. I own several more businesses now. But, what I basically found when I looked behind the curtain was terrifying, to be honest. It was really bad. The business was just in a really bad financial place. And I think the founder of the company had a very common problem that they understood their product. They cared about sales. They had no idea about the financial part of a business. And so that wasn't my background at the time. I was, 22 years old, but I pretty quickly realized we were either going to figure that out or we were going to die. And so it was pretty clear which one of those two I was interested in. And it really kind of engaged me in learning about the financial part of business. And as I've grown my entrepreneurial network and just met a lot of friends who are other entrepreneurs, I've figured out that that's a very common background. Most people don't go into a small business because they're a finance nerd. Most of them go in because they care about what they want to, sell or the service. So that was kind of how I got started. And like I said, I'm happy to share some of the scary moments, but that was kind of the basic premise.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I would like to dive in a little bit to the commonalities, the common threads. I know for myself, through line probably, whether I've been in my real estate investment and property management business, or had a social club and a retail store in Houston, or a PR and marketing and branding business, right? Some of the things that I see as commonalities in myself are exactly what you're talking about. I'm not a finance expert. I don't have a financial background. So I don't usually go in leading with numbers. I go in thinking about like who I want to hire because I like them, or I feel like they'll fit into this part of my business, and do that before I really think about the financial implications of those hires and all the taxes and all the other things that we don't often think about because they're not right in front of us every day. So are any of those things that you see, or what else do you see or in your own experience or with other people that you've worked with?
Yeah, to your point, I think the pitfall of that common path in entrepreneurship, which is usually guided by, a deep love of something. You want to deliver a certain service, or you care about a product. Maybe some people care about the customer or client that they're serving. And so it's kind of that question of like, what can I help them with? And the common kind of pitfall there is that you get blinded from the financial realities of what you're doing. And to your point, visionary people, which I consider myself much more visionary at this stage of my career than I used to be. But one of the natural parts of being a visionary is that you have to have some level of blind faith that you're going to pull this off. And, that's a good thing, but it also needs to be kept in check with the financial realities of your business. And that's kind of what I've provided for my businesses. Originally as CEO, running my own business. And then as I started investing in another business and hired a new CEO to replace me in my first business, now I'm advising CEOs. That's kind of been my last phase of my career. It's given me a different perspective on, you don't necessarily need that in your business every day, that financial, kind of filter, let's call it, to put your decision-making through, but it needs to have a voice at the table. And that's really what I've provided for my own companies, and now what I've founded FinElevate to be able to offer to our clients.
Yeah. So what does it look like when somebody works with FinElevate? What are the processes that you put into place, the questions that you ask, your ideal persona?
Yeah. So the way I like to say it, which is kind of weird, but I like to say that we've stacked a need with a want. Okay. And so everyone needs their day-to-day bookkeeping done, right? The problem with bookkeeping is that it's very low value just kind of by itself. So you categorize the expenses, maybe you did a monthly close, and you'll get a CPA or accounting type person will tell you, hey, we're not going to close on the 15th. We're going to get you closed by the 10th. And it's like, okay, awesome. I jokingly say it's the kind of job where if you get 100 out of 100 right, everybody just goes, okay, you did your job. Like, so what? It's not sales. It's not something exciting like doing visionary work, but that's kind of the trap that most bookkeeping falls into. And so what we do differently is that we do that part of the work. That's the need, but we stack the want. What most entrepreneurs want is they have one of four goals. They either want to grow their business, they want to be more profitable in their business, they want to improve their cash flow, or they want to get to the point where they can exit their business, whether that's hiring a CEO, whether that's selling it. And so we start with that goal in mind, and everything we do is to simplify the day-to-day needs of the categorizing and the boring stuff. We simplify that as much as possible. And then we put that time back into helping toward those goals. And that's really the kind of concept around the whole business, is that most fractional CFOs, they can give you a 20-page plan of all the things you could do. Most bookkeepers, they can tell you where that, dinner expense should be categorized. But where in between those does the rubber kind of meet the road? And that's really what we created FinElevate for.
Okay. And that is a very different approach than what I'm used to hearing from people who are financial advisors and bookkeepers and all of that. I think one of the things you say is your approach is that of an MBA, not a CPA.
Correct. Yeah. And to your point, that's why it's a different approach. So I know I've run my own businesses. You can't have a successful CEO who is spending all their time in the financial seat in a small business, because it's not really, again, typically a value-added seat. But I ran my businesses kind of from that position, obviously having to help out with sales and think about operations and manage a team and all the other elements. But I always had this deep appreciation for it. And so as I ended up, in my entrepreneurial journey, I was already on the path, and I went to the executive MBA program that I attended, and it was all corporate types. And that's fine, but I had a deeper understanding and kind of more of a gritty front lines reality version of what business really looked like. And they had all the jargon and the fancy titles and the cool business card. And so when I came out of that program, the reason I went was I wanted to get some of the nuggets of big business wisdom, and I wanted to figure out how those applied in small business. And so that was really my goal from the outset. And coming out of it and just having to address the financial parts of our business, all of that led me to where I am today, which was, hey, how can we add value, support business owners so you don't have to go get an MBA or you don't have to become a financial expert. Now, I would always recommend you become better at finance than you are, wherever you are in that journey. But I wanted to help companies. And the reality is a lot of people say, well, I need to make this financial decision in my business. Let me run to my CPA and ask a question. Well, I don't want to be harsh. There are many brilliant CPAs. In fact, one of my earliest mentor is a CPA, and he's a very rare breed of CPA who actually gives great advice. But the vast majority of CPAs are more focused on taxes and compliance. So if you've got $10 million in profit, a great CPA will help you figure out how to pay less of that to the government, but they're likely not going to help you make proactive money-making decisions within your business. And, that's a great CPA that'll help you save. A lot of them are just wired around like the lowest risk approach humanly possible. And I don't want to be reckless, but I also don't want the lowest risk. If we wanted the lowest risk, we wouldn't be entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned the different reasons why people are entrepreneurs or what they're trying to do, whether they're trying to grow their business, become more profitable, possibly exit soon because they're kind of done with that aspect. Yeah. So you're able to put on a different lens to really help make sure that the finances are mapping towards those goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. So what are the businesses that you own that brought you to this journey where you said, okay, I can actually now help other small businesses and entrepreneurs do what I've been able to successfully do for my companies?
So my first business is a baggage conveyor manufacturer. So this is really exciting business. Basically, when you claim your luggage at the airport, we make those. Yeah. So we make the parts and pieces and the entire carousels, as well as the conveyors that go, back from the ticketing area and that sort of thing.
Here.
And yeah, so it's kind of one of those businesses everyone's interacted with, no one's ever thought about.
Right. Exactly.
Now you will. Next time you claim your bag, you go, I had a guy on the podcast, he did that. And that's the natural reaction. But that was my first business. And that was the one that I ran as CEO for 13 years. It's originally the family business. And then once I got that, through some of the really, really ugly times early on, and then to kind of what I call level ground, which was where we dug our way, we'd stop digging in the hole. We'd filled the hole back in, but we were just kind of flat and had to run it in that mode for a while. And then finally evolved to where we were making enough money consistently enough to where I could, hire a CEO, invest in other businesses and kind of expand what I was doing. And so my second business, a partner with a gentleman, he's the third in line. His grandfather started the company. His father ran the company, and he's the third generation cabinet maker. So we do kitchen cabinets for, residential construction in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the second business. And then we went and bought a business, me and my partner, who's CEO of the conveyor company. We bought a company back in the airport space, and we actually, like when you check your bag, it goes on the conveyor that we manufacture. And then there's the door in the wall that's got the little flaps that hang down and their bag disappears. The door inside that wall, we actually sell those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the third business, kind of interrelated with the first one.
And I think it's so interesting because, like you said, these are things, all three of those businesses are businesses people interact with multiple times. I mean, if you work from home, especially, I'm in and out of my kitchen all day. And if you travel, you don't even realize, though, that these businesses are there. And do you mostly work now with, product and service based that are like the things that people use every day that we don't even realize that there's a need for, perhaps?
So the FinElevate is a completely different animal. So the kind of path between those is I had those three businesses, and I had kind of a holding company essentially that was providing these services the FinElevate now does for my first three companies. And essentially, was running into some of the same challenges of like, how do we actually add value in this? It's just, we've got employees and it's a cost center basically instead of a profit center. And so as I started to figure that out is when the idea came, we should go out in the market, because I have a lot of friends who would call on me, when PPP happened or any kind of financial developments in the world, interest rates are going up. And they just wanted my perspective because that was always the lens that I looked at business through. And so they kind of just put two and two together and went, wait a minute, there's a business opportunity here that I think addresses a really common challenge for small business owners. And it's more of a passion of mine than the manufacturing space, honestly. And so, yeah, we're primarily focused on helping more digitally based companies. So in other words, we're a diverse team from different states. I can't help you with your inventory counts, for example, which is very critical in a more manufacturing product-based company. So we're really more focused around digital companies, a lot of digital marketing companies, that sort of thing is kind of our main client base now.
Fantastic. I think that is really important because those are often the people in the creative fields, I think are often people who, like you said, go into something because we love it, but we don't have the financial backgrounds and maybe don't have the MBA, but getting it from something that you love to do and that you're pursuing as a passion is very different than having it as a business.
Exactly. Yeah, that was actually one of the main reasons that we started working with digital marketing firms was, to your point, they're creative types are not, it's more art than science.
Right.
And, unfortunately, the math, the financial side of business is more science. And I think there's kind of a layer of strategy and art that can go on top of it, but you have to have that foundation that's really solid.
Yeah. And the other thing that you said that really struck me is I think it can be hard to navigate. I work with a lot of startup companies who look for funding, and it can be hard for them to get connected to the right resources for funding, or for me to know who to connect them with, because I'll get people in my LinkedIn or in my email that say, oh, we do this and this and this. I'm like, I don't know how to vet them properly to make sure they're somebody I should pass on to a client who might need their services. So having a trusted resource and knowing that that's part of what you provide, I think it has to provide a huge level of comfort to your client base or people who are thinking about working with you.
Exactly. And like I said, first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm not a CPA. I'm not first and foremost an accounting person. I've developed that real deep appreciation, and we've obviously got, CPAs that support our team. But we've intentionally made a push not to be a tax firm. That's not what I want to do, because I think that, come March and April, good luck getting improvements on your business from someone who's also doing taxes, right? And so we made that very intentional decision from the very beginning before we even building our team out. But like I said, first and foremost, I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. So that's the way I look at life. And that's what I love about this, is connecting and supporting other entrepreneurs. I'm happy to have conversations with people and give advice, even if it's not a client, right? I'm not a paid consultant. That's not really what I do. I just love, connecting with other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about that, because I know one of the themes that I've seen in some of your interviews and some of the things you like to talk about are masterminds and entrepreneurial friendships and how that helped change your life. And then on your LinkedIn profile, I saw EOS. So I was like, okay, so you're really pouring into your own learning journey as well, and that networking. So how have masterminds and groups and networking and entrepreneurial friendships changed your life?
Yeah, that was really just a kind of a lucky break in my very early stages of my career. A mentor lined me up with my first mastermind group when I was 23 years old. And I went in and they were all, 50-something-year-old people in the room, experienced entrepreneurs, skins on the wall. I was the age of their kids. But, they took me under their wing. They saw that I was ambitious and I was, hungry to learn first and foremost, and not asking anything of them in the world except for their wisdom, right? And one thing I've learned now that I've been doing this for a long time, entrepreneurs love nothing more than a young person who, is behind them on the journey, is ambitious, but not out of control ambitious, right? Ambitious for the right reasons, let's say, and hungry to learn, right? I mean, if I meet somebody like that, I want to pour everything I can into them. That's just natural. And I think from what I've seen, that's just how entrepreneurs think. So that experience very early in my career set me up to have amazing mentors, to have, people that I otherwise would have never met. And what I learned through a mastermind is just the connection, a group of people who have the same broad goals, who really, truly want to support each other. So in other words, they're not there for networking. That's not a networking event. It's not the same thing. And so what it leads to is vulnerability. We had people talk about the impact that their failing marriage had on their business. That's, as a business owner, that's a very real thing. And so if I have to come in and pretend everything's great, and sometimes we feel like in front of our team and maybe even in front of an investor, you're pretending that, hey, everything's okay because you're trying to hold everything together. So that's been life-changing for me to make those connections. And then, as life evolves and you go through challenges, to have that support. And, I've had people in my mastermind groups that have, say, exited a business, had a really successful event. I mean, I went home and literally drank champagne on their behalf. It was like, I had to celebrate. It felt so good.
Yeah. I love that. I teach master's students, and the same thing. I love, most of them are probably going to go work for somebody else, but some of them are entrepreneurs or want to be. But all of them, I love hearing what they want to do and helping connect them to people who I think might be helpful in their journey. So it's one of the most exciting things that I think we can offer, right? Is our expertise and helping the next person come along.
And to your point, I recommend it for everyone. It's not just entrepreneurs. That's not just I own a business or I'm CEO of a business, I need a mastermind group. To your point, when I look back at going through, we all develop friendships, but it would have been probably next level for me when I look back to my executive MBA program, if I had kind of it only takes 2 or 3 people, maybe 4. to say, look, what are our goals out of this? Is our goal to get the highest grade possible? Is it get the best experience possible? Is it, and if we have alignment around those goals, a group of people to hold each other accountable and hold each other up is truly life-changing. I mean, it really is. So yeah, I advocate it for anyone in any walk of life.
Fantastic. And you touched on this when you talked about how being in a mastermind, there's a level of authenticity and being willing to share what's going on. You are a husband and a parent. And I love talking to dads because I think the question is always, moms are always asked, how do you balance everything? But I think now I interview so many men who are like, I'm designing my business so that I have successful business, but that I also can pour into my family. And
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about that. And how do you balance having all of these businesses with your family life?
It's, I think, similar to moms, similar to what my wife would say, it's duct tape and baling wire. I mean, it's like we're just holding it together. It feels like it's busting at the seams. My wife and I, even in the past week, just keep saying, like, it just seems like it gets crazier and crazier. I mean, the kids' schedules, I literally left in the middle of the day. There was an event at my kids' elementary school today where they had a little storybook parade where they're going around dressed up as characters and stuff. I literally raced back across town to get to my office in time for this. So it's just the nature of, what are your priorities? And it's what I love about entrepreneurship. There is no other career path where I think you can have the control to say, I will set my own priorities. And if one of them is family, which I hope it is for everyone, it certainly is for me, then you just make it work. And I had that experience. I've now gone for the past 7 summers for a month, my family to Carmel, California, which is kind of Pebble Beach, Monterey area. And it's where my wife and I got engaged, where we got married. So it's kind of our place. And so now that our kids are a little older, when our last one was born, we said, hey, let's go for a big chunk of the summer. And I was CEO of my company. I had no idea. This was pre-Zoom, pre-COVID, right? When all that started. I had no idea how I was going to pull it off. But I made it a priority. I said, it's going to happen no matter what. And the business has to step up. And I think that's one of the challenges. We talked about it, from a financial aspect, but business owners in general kind of start thinking, I am my business and my business is me.
Exactly.
And that's not real. Your business needs to step up sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, to your point, when you're talking about your first business, you have to be able to replace yourself. And I think that's a trap we also get into a lot, is we think that we are one and the same with our businesses, that nobody else can do what we do. And unfortunately, sometimes businesses get to that point where you have all the connections, you haven't had another person that you can depend on to lead if you aren't there. And then side note, I lived in Houston for 8 years, but came from California to Houston, and we would come back to California every summer because the weather is a lot nicer than it is in Texas. So I don't blame you for
100%
taking that journey.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so this is something else that I've been finding a lot of people are thinking about, especially mid-career professionals who might want to start their own business, but don't want to start from scratch. So they're looking at what companies can they buy, or can they enter into a franchise? So I'd love to hear your advice for people who are looking at buying a company versus founding a company.
Yeah, so I'm a huge advocate for buying a company if a company exists, kind of doing what you're looking to do. So it's really funny because I went down this path and I was a big buy company guy, bought really 3 companies, and then I went and started one, right? And so, so that was kind of the ironic part, but I realized in that path that, to me, if I can buy a company that has revenue, especially has profit, I like to avoid turnarounds. I've been there, done that. It's not for the faint of heart, and certainly not for the inexperienced. It took me way longer and was way more painful probably because I did it the first time around before I knew what I was doing. But, starting a company to me makes the most sense when you couldn't buy a company doing what you want to do. For most people, if there's a version of what you want to do, there's kind of a proof of concept in buying a company, right? And it's it's kind of like, I guess the way that I would think of it is like if you're building a house versus buying an existing house, right? If I don't have a place to live, I need to buy an existing house. So I'm not going to build a house and sleep and camp outside while I'm doing it. That doesn't make any sense. So Similarly, when I'm looking for a business, if it has revenue, it's proven, I know that it's solid, I know that it has success, it has clients, that's a better place to start for the vast majority of situations.
I feel that way about the nonprofit world too. They want to start businesses, but they want to start nonprofits, but there are so many that already exist. And there are a lot of ways to figure out how to get involved with something that already exists or buy a company that already exists.
That's so wise. So my wife is a social worker.
Oh, I love
And yeah, so she's still a licensed social worker. She's actually now the chairwoman of the board of the company that she originally started as just a frontline social worker. And so she's kind of seen all sides. And it's so funny you said that because, I'm an ambitious guy. And as entrepreneurs, we're kind of builders. We want to go out and we want to achieve and we want to do the next thing. And so I was always talking about someday we're going to have our own nonprofit. And she said exactly what you just said. She said, look, there are amazing nonprofits that are underfunded out there. And not every solution has to be go do it yourself for yourself. And I would say that's true of entrepreneur in a for-profit environment too. Collaborations, partnerships, good partnerships, to be clear, are amazing. They're life-changing. They're powerful. It's really the only way I want to do business now.
Yeah.
But, you just need to understand on the partnership side who you're dealing with and what value everybody's adding.
Yeah. And I will say I am guilty of starting nonprofits. I started one in Houston and starting different businesses, right? And not really thinking about what else is out there or seeing holes and then going, okay, now this doesn't need to exist because this bigger organization is doing the same work. So we can just fold what we're doing under them. That's another thing to think about when we're looking at starting anything new, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that you would advise a new business owner to do or think about when it comes to their financial side right off of the bat that they might not realize they need to be thinking about already?
Well, I would say that like any other part of your business, right? You're not going to sell a product and not understand it. So first and foremost, acknowledge the reality of where you're at, financial knowledge wise. We're all on a journey, right? I'm not Warren Buffett. I mean, I may be ahead of some people in the journey, right? But I'm not, again, the number one person in the world. But the whole idea is if I understand where I'm at and I'm realistic about the importance of it, then I'm going to continue to get better. And so that's the first thing I would advise everyone to really be cognizant of. And then the second thing is just, I like to say that if I can't understand a business and how it would make money on the back of a napkin, then I don't really understand the business. And so, and it's just part of it's how my brain is wired because I am more financially kind of oriented. But I would definitely recommend that for someone who's newer to entrepreneurship, or maybe you're already in the business and you don't really know what you don't know on the financial part, is to just break it down in simple terms and, okay, what's revenue? And then as a percentage, I like to look at everything else. So in other words, my cost of product or service as a percentage, cost of marketing and sales as a percentage, cost of labor, that's a huge one. I like to isolate that out from other overhead because labor is usually the vast majority of the spend. And it's it's the one where you make some of the biggest decisions. So I like to see it in its own way compared directly to revenue. So in other words, I'm 35% of every dollar of revenue is going to labor. I need to know that number. And then looking at your overhead and looking at it as a percentage. And what that allows you to do once I start to look at it that way is I can start to kind of do what if scenarios. What if revenue went down by 25%? What if revenue went up by 100%? And start to see what impact that has. And I start to realize does that mean it would impact this labor? And now I'm asking the right questions to really get, deeper and understand the business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And is there, I'm sure it's different for every business, but is there a certain threshold of, I know when people think about like their paycheck and how much you spend on housing versus other things in your life, is there any set formula for people to think about with their business in terms of a good amount to spend on labor is between this and this percentage, depending on what your field is, right? Or on materials or anything like that?
I would say that unfortunately there are not like across the board kind of benchmarks, but there are in established businesses, right? Like if you were to take a restaurant, for example, there's a pretty clear understanding within that industry of what percentage of revenue should be spent on the food product, right? And so in a more established type of business, there are benchmarks, and I would definitely recommend for everyone figure those out. If you have a business that has benchmarks, because there's a lot of businesses, maybe not necessarily direct competitors to you, but there are a lot of businesses in that field, then you should learn and understand what those benchmarks are and understand where you are in relation to them. Yeah.
I know you said you're not as passionate about manufacturing, but you have 3 manufacturing businesses. One started as a family business. How did you decide or find the other 2 businesses that you bought?
Yeah. So ironically, through a mastermind group, I met the gentleman who's my partner in the cabinet business. And I really felt like I knew the journey that business needed to go on. I mean, he was in a place that I'd been before with my conveyor business. And, we thought that the 2 of us partnered together. He's much more of a customer focused entrepreneur. And so it was like, okay, I understand more of this operational piece, the way we need to organize the team around the goals that we're trying to get to. I mean, those are the journeys I had already been on. And so that made a lot of sense. And, in that particular business, there are pros and cons to every business, but I do love the new residential housing you were in Houston. Us Texans are crazy when it comes to new houses. It's like, I always joke that people in DFW act like they don't want to have a used house. Now, I live in a 70-year-old house, but people have this mindset of like 10 minutes further out and I can get a brand new house with 20 more square feet. Let's do it, and they seem willing to do that until we run out of land, which is maybe 1,000 years from now. I don't know. We're never going to run out of land.
Yeah.
So,
and I do have a stepbrother in that area who retired from his career, and he does do that. He builds a new house, lives in it for a little bit, sells it, moves into something else that's brand new construction, gets to kind of put his own take on it. So that is definitely, I'm sure, in other places as well, but Texas, 100%. My boyfriend and I were watching something. He's like, oh, everybody's houses are so clean. It was a show about like people in Texas. And you're like, yeah, because we have lots of space. We can put everything, in cabinets.
That's right. So, tons of cabinets.
Yeah,
we love
fantastic, which is what you make. So that's
all
fantastic.
about it.
What do you see as the next phase of your business? Are you writing a book? Are you going to have a course? Are you doing other things for people who might not be ready to hire somebody full-time, or they might not be able to afford your services?
That is absolutely the vision. So right now it's, we're getting everything up and running more efficiently. And so we're in that mode. But yes, my passion for this is not going to stop with just, paying clients who are able to hire us for their month-to-month and day-to-day stuff. I definitely think that the educational part is something I'm passionate about, and building tools. So we didn't really get a ton into our process, but one of them is a diagnostic tool we call the FinScore, which helps businesses really have a clear understanding. Like the simple profit formula is an element of the FinScore. So, that's the sort of thing that we're doing for our clients. And so, yes, the question is already in my mind, rattling around every day of, okay, how can we do this and deliver it in a kind of touchless model where it could be more a digital offering, to businesses that maybe, to your point, aren't ready for the all-in version.
Right. Well, and that actually was leading to my next question, which is, who is your ideal client persona? Do they have to be at a certain phase in their business to retain you?
Well, it really just depends, in terms of what they can afford. Obviously, we are more of a premium service because, like I said, we're doing a lot of things that are not just kind of your day-to-day, reconciling the bank statement. And so, to your point, not everyone can afford that. It really just depends on the business. I would say probably 500,000 to $1 million in revenue and up is kind of where we start to see businesses that think we make sense. And it's really just, the ROI, right? It's just like marketing, which well. There's a lot of businesses that never grow that just keep saying, well, as soon as I can afford it, I'm going to do some marketing. And the reality is, in business, you have to be willing to make, strategic investments. And that's what we're trying to provide, obviously, in the financial side. But yeah. And so digital companies is really a big focus for us. We're heavy into EOS. We really want to support that financial seat in the businesses that we're supporting and speak their language and get in and help them see their business in a way they've never seen before.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to see what you do next and be able to promote it and have another conversation once you have all of these new tools out for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
First, are there any concepts that people might not realize are things that they can use to their advantage when they're thinking about how they're setting up their structure and their accounting side of their business?
Well, one, it's not so much accounting, but it's kind of in the broader area of finance. So we talked about the simple profit formula. I would advocate that for anyone out of the gate, no matter where you are in business, you should know that. The second one that I'll throw in is the power of pricing. Okay. Pricing is, and I think it's one of those, it's a little bit of a mathematical concept. So in other words, it's kind of lost in the shuffle, the significance of pricing, but it's impossible to overstate how important pricing is. And when you're pricing your service or your product, it's the common trap that most business owners fall into that, well, if I'm kind of on low, medium, it's easier to sell. And that might be true, but the reality is after you sell it, you still have to service it. And where are you going to have money to do that, right? And so, higher prices, it supports having, more reinvestment into offering a more premium deliverable, hiring better people, reinvesting in things like training and, continuous improvement within your company and having your marketing game, right? And so all of that gets fueled by what you're able to bring in terms of revenue. And so I would advocate for the vast majority of businesses, be a little higher on your price, figure out what it would take to justify it in your market, and then hold firm on that and be willing to say, I'd rather not fill my plate with lower priced revenue. I'd rather hold out for the good ones, because when the good ones come, you can build so much more of a robust, sturdy company based on that.
Yeah. It's the push-pull of, if you're a new company starting out, you want to get clients in, so you might price a little bit lower, or you might really have a mission that you want to serve people and help people. And there's so many companies that can't afford you. So you lower your price or you change things. But the reality is they're just as much work, if not more, than the people who can afford to pay your full price.
Yep.
And I need to tell this to myself too.
Yes. And to your point, going back, let's think back to the nonprofit example, right? It's not to say that, my goal is world domination of making all the money or anything like that. But in reality, it makes a lot more sense for me to support the types of clients that can actually afford what I do. And then exactly like we said, maybe I create a more DIY offering to help people below that level, but I need to make money so that I can afford to invest in those DIY alternatives and to give it to, let's be honest, I would rather give money to a nonprofit that's doing amazing things, helping people who can't help themselves, than subsidizing clients who really can't afford what I'm doing. And so that's kind of my path. And it's not intended to be harsh. It's just intended to be realistic, what it takes to run a successful business.
Yeah. And on your level of expertise that you've built up over time, the money that you've invested in your businesses to learn the skill set, the money you've invested in your executive MBA program, the mastermind, all of those things. And so that's what I think we forget is somebody's not just buying a service. They're really buying all of our experience that has created this product or service for them.
Exactly. Yes. And to that point, you're not going to charge them for hours, let's say, that you're working on another client, but your wealth of experience that comes across, paid work and time that you spent educating yourself, thinking on these topics, and your passion and your natural talent, those all need to be reflected in your price. And that's something a lot of times, us entrepreneurs who we're fearful of getting out of being humble. It's kind of like, well, I don't want to be this self-promoter. I don't want to, be this person who people just are shock and awe when they see our prices. But the reality is, you need to price yourself according to the value that you add.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any last thoughts that you want to leave us with today in terms of what people should be thinking of, pitfalls that you've seen them?
I think the biggest one is be a lifelong learner. If you are anywhere near small business, entrepreneurship, or even just interested in it, continue to educate yourself. It's a never-ending challenge. I wake up every day and I think, by the time I go to bed tonight, I want to be smarter than I was last night. And I really, truly believe that whether I win the day on other terms or not, that's ultimately what's going to define my success. And part of that is, working on relations with other people and making sure that I've got, amazing relationships in my life, both business and personal. I feel like if I'm doing those two things, I'm going to win in the end because I'm going to win on my terms, right?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And my last question, Colin, is do you have a favorite quote, mantra, family motto, words that you live by that inspire you in your daily life?
That's funny. So within my family, we talk about being wired tight. And I think it's kind of a military term, even though I'm not a military guy, but it basically means, it's kind of that I've got my stuff together. I have redundancies in place. I'm looking out about how I'm controlling my environment. And so it's really just about basically, if I'm that support structure and I'm able to do that for myself and for the people immediately around me, what if I surround myself with people who are also that way? And so it's kind of, I've got a 12, 9, and 7-year-old. They're not always wired tight. They are not always wired tight. But it kind of gives me a mantra to them is like, hey, be on time, have your stuff together, be prepared, have everything with you that you're supposed to have. And those are elements of just being a productive person that other people can count on. And to me, that's one of the proudest things in life is if other people can count on you.
Fantastic. Thank you for your words of wisdom. I think you've given everybody a lot to chew on and think about as they're looking at their own financial well-being and how they want to move through the world of entrepreneurship and small business ownership. So
thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. And thank you to our listeners and viewers for coming back for another great episode. I will have the information for Colin's business in the show notes so that you can reach out, check out his website, see if they're fit for you, or just get other information that you might have available. And I will be back again in a few days with another amazing expert to help you on your journey to entrepreneurship. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.